Okay, so thanks everyone involved at the GLRC for putting this workshop on, and appreciate the opportunity to participate. My research is concerned with the economy and labor market as they pertain to production workers employed in the cultural sector, including live events, television, film production. I'm based in Toronto and much of my research is Toronto-centric. However, the issues faced here run parallel to other cities and smaller markets across the country. And I have and will continue to participate in online meetings and town halls that provide a more comprehensive perspective from across the sector. But for today, I'm going to focus on just some of the events that have taken place recently in Toronto. So my talk is about what happens when the show stops, when COVID happened and productions, events, theaters, various venues across the country and most likely across the globe were no longer able to operate. So I want to highlight the consequences for workers as they navigate the shutdown and social distancing measures and the gradual, though still precarious, return to work as it happens. A lot of spaces around the city are public spaces, but they can be transformed into venues. And a lot of the sites we see are built by labor, the labor of stagehands and technicians, and the work that goes on behind the scenes in the warehouses, by the designers who help to put the ideas down and get them into production, and through the workers in the various facilities that work with the materials to put them together, to the people who ship them out and on site execute the design. So there's a lot of work and labor that is involved. Actually, if I go back to my first screen, if you can see this is a stage for Veld. It's a big concert event that happens at Downsview Park. And if you look carefully, you can see that this is made up of many pieces of metal, of flooring, of lighting, a metal truss system that holds up the lighting, and all of the cabling, and then the power source and supplies that go to provide power to operate the event. This takes many workers working over weeks in preparation in advance, and many workers, dozens, if not hundreds of workers, working all day for a week in advance to build and set this up. So it's a lot of work that goes into this. And as the previous talk mentioned, a lot of the work is precarious. It's gig work. It's from production to production. And the spring and summer months are a really important time, especially in a city like Toronto, for workers to stay active and to stay employed and to have an income. And so I want to talk about today, I'm going to situate the arts economy and the broader economy and labor market, and talk about the impact of COVID-19, briefly about precarious employment in the sector, and then some examples of some of the responses that are happening now. And throughout my talk, in my research, I primarily use the term stagehand and refer to technical work. And these are, for me, almost abbreviations. There's so many different roles, technical roles that go into putting on a production, but I'll use stagehand for now as a term, a catch-all term. So the ongoing shutdowns in the global pandemic, the culture industry in Canada approximately is almost $60 billion. Other estimates have it at upwards of $90 to $100 billion across the country. Roughly 700,000 workers are employed. It's hard to pin down the exact precise numbers because a lot of the jobs are fluid. People work for multiple firms. A lot of people are self-employed. And so data collection is complicated by these facts. But it is a large and significant part of the economy. And so it's very important to study and understand the impact of COVID. So again, as I just mentioned, some estimates have it as being roughly $100 billion worth of GDP. As the previous talk mentioned, relatively low wages. The average here from Statistics Canada has it just under $20 an hour, depending on what you're doing, your position and your experience. Could be much higher. If you're working for a union where rates are negotiated in advance, you might have more pay, more protections, benefits, and other benefits associated with organized work. What happened in March was one of the most drastic changes to the industry that's occurred in our times, in modern times. Starting the first indication that this was a very serious and long-term event was the shutdown of major sports leagues, cancellations of games and events, and the postponement of the playoffs for different leagues, major sporting events. These are multi-billion-dollar companies and businesses that employ many people to, again, put on the production. You can think of the lighting crew, the camera crews, people at the event to set up the floor itself. There's so much that goes on to put on these spectacles, and all of that stopped. And so people went from, and the spring and summer, as I'll highlight later, is one of the busiest times of year. So this was a huge disruption to people's incomes, as we all know. And as social distancing measures started to expand, we saw the cancellation of concerts, we saw the cancellation or the closing of theaters, and museums, especially national museums across the country, shut down. Independent or smaller galleries and museums maybe applied distancing protocols, but for the most part, they saw their revenues decline sharply and their operating capital reduced significantly. The March is also an important time of year to consider because that's when March break happens, field trips, students and families going on vacations and trips and traveling, going to different venues across the city. Those did not occur. And as we get into the spring and summer months, the outdoor festivals, concerts, and so on, which are a major part of the work, the gig work that a lot of the employees in this sector depend on, did not happen. So just maybe to backtrack a second, when I'm talking about the cultural industry or the arts and culture sector or production work, we can think of this as production, manufacturing, distribution, presentation, performance, and or the preservation of creative goods and services, including the discovery of preservation of heritage. So there's a lot of cultural events, film, television, artistic, creative productions that occur in multiple spaces, indoor, outdoor venues. And there's a creative chain, a professional creative chain, a network, economic network that was completely disrupted. And so all of this cultural activity stopped. You have online delivery of stuff, and some people maintain their work, but so many people from the live events, filming, whether it's conferences and venues, camera crews and so forth, all of them were at home unemployed, either on employment insurance or CERB. Those who weren't able to work during the winter months, who were not able to get EI or qualify for CERB, were also facing other economic challenges. Stagehands doing technical labor, helping to produce and put together events, shows, concerts, etc., make up 40%, or 40% of them are seasonal. Their jobs are, by definition, gig jobs, temporary types of employment. And for those in maybe higher skilled trades, they might be more closer to 12% seasonal, maybe working full time for a production company or for a theater or other venues that have ongoing productions. And so they work full time for those venues. But a lot of the stagehands that are precariously employed experience seasonal work at a higher level, and it just compounds their challenges. And so the downtime, this common experience that has occurred, COVID has prevented workers from resuming work after the slow winter months. And so it had an even more devastating impact than we might otherwise recognize. And so moving forward, what has happened? The Canadian government has promised funding. They're injecting money and funds and supporting programs across the country. There's the $500 million emergency support fund and other programs that the Minister of Heritage, Guibo, is in the works. They're tabling stuff and they're trying to put forth new funding packages as we move forward. So when possible, venues and companies that can reopen, that might lead to opportunities for people to resume employment. For example, outdoor events might be a possibility with more feasible. It might be more feasible to do social distancing. But we've seen cancellations in the fall. We've seen the numbers going up, and so whether or not, I think, again, I can't see the messaging. So if I'm running out of time, do you mind just letting me know over voice?
Sorry, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm in the early stages of my research. And I want to understand the impact of the loss of jobs and understand it in a material sense. But I also want to explore ways that we might address the high levels of precarity in the industry by learning from a lot of the challenges and the vulnerabilities that have been highlighted as a response to, as a result of COVID. Some of the events that have happened recently, the Day of Visibility, some of you may have noticed where different venues and sites across cities all over the country, all over North America, I believe, were lit up, especially in Canada, lit up in red to raise awareness about the industry and to show people just how much of an impact that the arts and culture industry has on our society. And so I won't read all this, but one of the people that helped to organize the event talked about how it's really important to raise awareness, and some of these people felt left out in the dark and very vulnerable, very isolated. And so lighting up the city in red was a way to bring people together, get people in the industry involved. Very little. They weren't allowed to have people there because the numbers were going up. But I went to some of these events, and just to hear the relief from people just to be back out there doing something, to be doing the work that they love to do, setting up stuff. They can't wait to get back to work. And so when possible, venues and companies that can reopen could provide an opportunity for in-person participant observation for me, but I'm waiting for that to be a possibility. TV shows and other stuff have started to come back on. Ultimately, COVID-19 is an inescapable reality of our time and will be integrated in a meaningful way in my research. And the long-term social and economic effects of the distancing measures have yet to fully bear out. Nevertheless, the following several months will be an important time to assess the industry and develop insights into new pathways for establishing improved working conditions and protections for all workers. The loss of jobs in a material sense will undoubtedly need to be explored, but so too will the increase once, not if, a return to work occurs, however complicated it may be. All right. Thank you.